Om Vakradunda Mahakaya
Vakaranamahakaya
Surya Koti
Suryakothi
Samaprabha
Samaprabha
Nirvignam Kuru
Nirvignam Kuru
Me
Me
Deva
Deva Sarvakaryeshu
Sarvakaryeshu
Sarvada
Sarvada Saraswati
Saraswati
Namastubhyam
Namastupyam
Varade
Varade Kamarupini
Kamarupini Vidyarambham
Yarambam
Karishyami
Karishyami
Siddhir Bhavatu Me
Sada
Sada Guru Brahma Guru
Guru
Vishnu
Vishnu
Guru Devo
Devo
Maheshwaraha
Maheshwaraha
Guru
Guru
Sakshat
Sakshat Param
Param
Brahma
Brahma Tasmai
Tasmai
Shri
Shri
Gurave
Gurave
Namaha
Namaha Om
Om Sahana
Sahana
Bhavatu Sahano
Sahano
Bhunakto
Bhunaktu
Sahaviryam
Sahaviryam Karavavahe
Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhetamastu ma
Tamastu
vidvishavahe
Mavidvishavahe
Om
Om
Shanti
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 Shanti Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha
Atha Dvitiyodhyayah
अथ तृतीयोऽध्यायः
Arjuna Vacha
अर्जुन उवाच
स्थितप्रज्ञस्य का भाषा
स्थितप्रज्ञस्य का भाषा
समाधिस्तस्य केशव
समाधिस्थस्य केशव
स्थितदीर्घं प्रभाषेत
स्थितधिं किं प्रभाषेत
किमासीत व्रजेत किम्
किमासीथा व्रजेत किम्
श्रीभगवानुवाच
श्रीभगवानुवाच
प्रजहाति यदा कामान्
प्रजहाति यदा कामान्
सर्वान् पार्थमनोगतान्
सर्वान् पार्थमनोगतान्
आत्मन्येवात्मना तुष्टः
आत्मन्येवात्मना दृष्टः
तुष्टः
तुष्टः
आत्मन्येवात्मना तुष्टः
आत्मन्येवात्मना तुष्टः
स्थितप्रज्ञस्तदोच्यते
स्थितप्रज्ञस्तदोचते.
Up to that we have seen. Now we will read the next shloka also. Dukkeshvanudvignamanaha
दुःखेष्वनुद्विग्नमनाः
Sukheshu vigataspruhaha
सुखेषु विगतस्पृहः
Vitarabhayakrodhaha
वीतरागवयक्रोधः
Sthitadhirmuniruchyate.
स्थितधीर्मुनिरुच्यते.
So 56, shloka number 56. Dukkeshu anudvignamanaha sukeshu vigatasprugaha वीतरागभयक्रोधः स्थितधीः मुनिः इति उच्यते. स्थितधीः स्थितप्रज्ञः समाधिस्थः all mean the same. स्थिताधीः यस्य सः the one whose धीः बुद्धिः knowledge. धीः means buddhihi. Buddhi means knowledge, not antakaranam. We are knowledge you have to take, or one whose antakaranam is steady in this knowledge, within wisdom. One who has wisdom, nishta in jnanam, jnana nishta. Munihi Panditaha Jnani Shtadihi Tuchate. Who is that? Dukkeshu Anudvignamanaha, who is not shaken by dukkha, pain, sufferings. Similarly, not taken over by pleasures. When he gets sukham, happiness, it doesn't jump and hit the ceiling. Similarly, when he experiences pain, he doesn't break down. So, therefore, Sukheshu Vikataspurgaha, Dukkeshu Anudvigna Manaha, mind, the one whose mind is not affected, shaken by dukkha. Vikataspurgaha means then Sukheshu Vikataspurga, Spurga, Icha, Vikataha, that is Vikata, Spurga, Yasmat, Saha, the one whom the longing for the desired objects, longing for pleasure, longing for the desired objects, so, and it's a pleasure, sukham has gone. So Vikata Spragaha, who is without Spragha, without longing. Sukesha Vikata Spragaha. When you get your desired object, you will have sukham. So that Spragha, the desire for getting the desired objects itself is not there. Therefore, is same in sukham and dukkam and vitaraha bayat krodaha vigataha raga bayat krodaha yasmat saha, from whom raga, longing, baya, fear, krodha, anger has gone. That person is called stitadhihi stitaprajnaha iti, the one who is not affected by adversities, one who is without yearning for pleasures, longing for pleasures. Pleasure derived from gaining the desired object. No yearning for desired objects, therefore, no yearning for pleasures also. And is free from longing, fear, and anger, is said to be a person whose knowledge remains, whose knowledge remains. Arjuna's question, as we have seen, was answered completely in the previous shloka. Being awake to yourself and in yourself, Atmanieva Atmana Tushtaha, you discover joy, Tushtaha Bhavati, your fulfillment, Purnatvam. And you discover it by yourself, meaning how? Meaning through knowledge, by Jnanam. Without Jnanam, Atma Jnanam, self-knowledge, you cannot discover happiness in yourself. How can you discover happiness in yourself, by yourself, when the self is unhappy? Generally, you are happy if your desire is fulfilled. But here you are happy with yourself without fulfilling any desire. Then how is it possible? The nature of the Atma is free from any sense of limitation. And the person who is awake to this particular fact, the Sita Prajna, is free from unhappiness. As desires arise in his or her mind, the person is not affected by them because of being happy with himself or herself. This then was how Krishna described the characteristics of a person of wisdom when Arjuna wanted to know how a wise person responds to the world. How does he conduct himself in the world? Even though one's response to the world doesn't necessarily reveal how much wisdom one has, still, Arjuna thought that the spontaneous expressions of a wise person interacting in the world would reflect those values to be cultivated assiduously by a seeker and would therefore serve as a handy reference. Knowing how a wise person expresses himself or herself in the world is not for judging whether a person is wise or otherwise. It is not that we have a matrix of norms indicating the exact behavior of a wise person against which everyone is measured. It is only to know what should I follow in order to be wise. That is the idea. Not to judge, not for judging. It is for oneself. What should I follow to be wise? That is why Siddhapragya Lakshanani Sadhakasya Sadhanani. What are the Lakshanas of the Siddhapragya becomes the sadhana for the sadhaka. What was it that the wise person followed before becoming wise that made him or her wise? And that continues as a spontaneous expression of the person. This is what Arjuna really wanted to know. Because the characteristics of Visita Prajna become the very means, the sadhanani, to be followed by Yamamukshu. Krishna understood this to be the spirit of Arjuna's question and therefore answered it accordingly. The threefold source of sorrow, Trivida Dukkha Mulani. Source or pain, dukkha has three sources: Adhyatmika, Adhibautika, Adidevika. We call this as Trivida Tapaha. That is why three times Shanti also. Trivida Shantihi, Trivida Tapa Shamanartham. So three types of sources of dukkha. Adhyatmika is pain for which the source is your own body, mind, and senses from a stomach ache onwards, from a headache onwards. The second source of sorrow, Adi Bhautika, or the situations around you, including the people and bugs that irritate you. Finally, Adi Devika is the pain that is caused, pain or sorrow caused by things such as earthquakes and lightning, all the natural calamities, earthquakes, lightning, etc. This kind of pain is not created by your brother-in-law or anyone else, but it is from a source that is absolutely divine, known, natural phenomena over which we have no control whatsoever. You may try to control mosquitoes with certain sprays that will destroy them, but there is nothing you can do to prevent an earthquake. Thus, while the source of sorrow is threefold, there are not different types of sorrow. Sorrow may express itself in 100 different ways: weeping, howling, kicking, moaning, and so on. But the sorrow itself is one and the same. The word dukkheshu in the shloka is in the plural because the source of sorrow is threefold, as explained by Shankaracharya in his commentary to this shloka. And those whose minds are not affected or shaken by the sorrow arising from these three sources of pain are said to be wise. Because the sources of pain are always active, pain is possible for a wise person. But he or she is not affected by it. Not that he will not get pain. Pain will be there, but not affected by it. What then is the response of a wise person when his head aches? Will his head ache? Is the first question. Or let us start from the very beginning. Does he even have a head? Yes. And because wise person continues to have a head, it may ache. Now, when his head aches, does he know it or not? After all, he is Sachidananda. Being Satich Ananda, what happens when there is a headache? Does he recognize it? The shloka indicates that he does by saying, when such pain occurs, the wise man is not affected. When anyone recognizes dukkha, there is dukkha for him. But what happens afterwards? The person is shaken by pain or sorrow and then becomes disturbed. Udvigna manaha. Any disturbance from the three sources described above can make it a reality. The headache is there, you recognize it, and then you worry about it until your whole head and everything else aches. You may even become a pain to everyone around you. You are the only one with a neck pain, but you talk so much about it and make such a fuss that your pain also becomes everyone else's pain in the neck. That a wise person doesn't do. A wise person's response to sukha. What about pleasure? Sukham then. There are people who can remain quiet when dukkha comes, but jump around like a football when something pleasant happens. The word Sukheshu here refers to any happy, pleasant situation, regardless of its source, which can also be described in the same threefold manner. Sukha can come from your sensory pleasure, from certain external event or yearning for such pleasures. Sukheshu, Spriha. But as a wise person, not laugh when something funny is happening, yes, but there is no encore once more from the person, no longing. Recognizing both pain and pleasure, he or she is not carried by either of them. Sukeshu Vigata Sprigaha. Sukeshu Vigata Sprigaha. Dukkeshu Anudvigna Manaha. All are Ekavachan only. Anudvigna Manaha Ekavachan. Describing the person. This characteristic then becomes a sadhana for a mumukshu. Shankaracharya in his commentary to this shloka gives an example of fire. If you feed the fire with more wood, it will grow even more. Anuvivardhate. Vivardhate, anuvivardhate. Vardhate, vardhate, anuvivardhate. In keeping with the fuel that has been offered, it grows to become a big conflagration. When you first light a fire, it always starts as a flame. But set one match to a tank of gasoline and your instant conflagration. Thus, the more the fuel, the more the fire. Unlike the fire, Shankaracharya said, the wise person's sukham resolves in himself or herself in his or her fullness. The idea here is, since there is no yearning for sukham, the person's desires do not get out of hand. Krishna also said in this shloka that one who is not swept away by either sukha or dukkha is free of likes, fear, and anger, is vitaraga by prodaha. Freedom from raga implies freedom from dvesha also. They are a pair. Raga dvesha is a pair, dvandva. When one is mentioned, the other is automatically understood to be included. In other words, they go together. The happiness of those who are not in the hands of raga dvesha is not determined by the raga dveshas. The raga dveshas do not affect their being happy with themselves. The raga dveshas no longer have any teeth. They may be baby raga dveshas or old raga dveshas, but either way, they do not bite because they cannot bite. They can only be enjoyed. This is why raga dveshas of the wise are referred to as non-binding desires. They are toothless. They cannot cause any pain. The absence of fear. Once raga is gone, fear also goes. Fear exists only when desire is there. And desire is there only when raga dvesha is there. In fact, raga dvesha is what is called desire. Kama indicates duality. It is due to the notion, I am this much alone. Everything else is other than me and I have to get it. Thus, there is a duality, meaning that there is a difference between Jiva, the individual, and Ishvara, the Lord, the total Jiveshvara Bheda. Naturally, then there will be fear. Dvaitathi Bhayam Bhavati. Because a difference between the individual and the Lord implies duality between the individual and the world. And duality between the individual and the world means duality between individual and individual. Once you accept the duality between individual and Ishvara, you will find difference, Bheda everywhere. So everything is not is different from me, separate from me, duality. Therefore, that becomes the source of fear, the cause of fear. If you think you are different from Ishvara, you will think that you are different from the world and from everyone else in the world. And in this world of duality, you are an insecure person. Therefore, the fear of danger from another source will always be there because the other will always be there. Fear comes from duality only. Any fear means that duality is there because you recognize the source of fear as something other than yourself. You can even be afraid of yourself. You have created a split in yourself. There is an ideal I and an actual I. And the actual I is always frightening to the ideal I. This is also the reason why you are afraid of an insane person. Provided you are sane, of course. Similarly, you may find that you are afraid of a person who is sad. There can be no fear if there is only one thing, one vastu, Brahma. The second thing is necessary for fear to occur. Therefore, the one who has no duality is not only free from raga dvesha, but also free from fear. Anger also goes away. Lastly, a wise person is free from anger, which is nothing but another form of raga. Desire obstructed is krodha, anger. So therefore, raga not there, where is krodha? So desire itself is transformed into anger. First, the desire is in a very benign form, and then it is transformed into another form, an ugly form called anger. We'll be seeing this later in the chapter. Kamat Krodha Vijayate. The Siddha Pragya Lakshana, we will see this shloka later. It comes when what I want is not accomplished due to some obstruction. That very kama turns into anger, whose target is the obstruction. Whatever is obstructing my desire becomes the object of my anger. Many murders take place because the object of a person's love becomes the object of his or her anger. A man doesn't kill the loving woman, he kills only the obstinate, unwilling woman. And then only you will cry for the loving one. Thus, when a person becomes an obstruction to your desire, that same person becomes the object of your anger. Anger is always a mutilated, transformed, deflected form of karma. Therefore, if you are free of karma, desire, you will be free of krodha, anger also. So duality and fear. The word bhaya, fear, was put between the words raga and krodha because of its special significance, which is dealt with very well in the Shastra. The only way to be free of fear is by swallowing duality, and you cannot swallow duality unless there is no duality. Because there is no duality, it can be swallowed, but only through knowledge. This is the only way of getting rid of fear. Wherever there is duality, there is fear. Fear of mortality, fear of being put down, fear of being small, fear of not making it, and so on. Fear can exist only as long as there is a seeker-sought relationship. The very special relationship implying duality between the seeker and the sought, and in the final analysis, the duality between oneself and the Lord. Any small division whatsoever is enough to cause fear. Even to say Ishvara is everything and I am a part of it is enough. In fact, upon analysis, you will find that this concept is the very point from which everything becomes different. This difference is born out of a lack of inquiry, avichara, or non-thinking. And if after inquiry, after vichara, duality is still there, it is a tragedy. Because the Upanishads expect this kind of thinking or non-thinking. They address a topic thoroughly, pointing out that as long as there is any division whatsoever, fear cannot be avoided. A Muni is a thinking person, a person of inquiry, and the knowledge, dhihi, of the Muni stays sthita. That is it. That is, it doesn't swing and sway. The Muni doesn't think duality, Dvaita one day and non-duality, Advaita the next, just because someone has put forth a cogent argument. In fact, Dvaita is not knowledge, it's a belief. Regardless of the number of objections raised, Advaita is something you know. You may not be able to communicate it to someone else but you know it is because it is yourself. It is not something you have to believe. It is a freedom from all notions. Dvaita is all that is there. We have seen that the person whose knowledge stays is called Sthita Pragya, a wise person. Sannyasi also is a word to point out Jnananishta, one whose knowledge is firm and abiding. This word was brought out by Shankaracharya here because he did not think that one could be a jnani without being a sannyasi. As we proceed, we shall see that Shankaracharya's sannyasa is always jnana, nothing less. Shankaracharya's sannyasa is always jnanam. So, sannyasa means jnanam. That is sarvakarma sannyasa. Sannyasa by jnanam. Therefore, jnananishta is a person who is a sannyasi. Sannyasi is sannyasi because of jnanam. Iti. Further, Bhagavan Krishna said, let us read the next shloka. Yes sarvatra nabhisnehaha.
Yes sarvatra nabhisrehaha.
Tat prapya shubham.
Tathat prapya shubham.
Nabhinandate nadveshti.
Nabhinandati nadveshtihi.
Tasya prajna pratishtitha.
Tasya prajna pratishtitha.
Yaha sarvatra abhisnegaha. Tattat prapya tattat shubhashubham prapya. Na abhinandati na dveshti. Tasya prajna pratishtita. Yaha sarvatra, everywhere, in all situations. Abhisnega. Snegaha is attachment. Sneha, love. Abhisnegaha. Anabhisnegaha. Abhisnegaha. Anabhisnegaha. Abhisnegaha, attachment. Abhisnegaha, attachment. Same. Abhisnegaha also same meaning. Anabhisnegaha, nanch. Without attachment. The one who is not attached. Everywhere. In all situations. Shubhashubham tattat shubhashubham prapya. Shubham prapya, ashubham prapya. When gaining sukha and dukkam, shubham and ashubham prapya. Shubha shubham prapya na abhinandati. Shubham prapya na abhinandati. Ashubham prapya na dveshti. Gaining sukha, he doesn't rejoice, doesn't jump and hit the ceiling. Gaining dukkha, na dveshti, he doesn't hate. So raga dvesha not there. The person with regard to gaining pleasant or unpleasant and unpleasant. The one who is same without attachment and not touched by sukha and sukha. Na abhinandati, na dveshti. Shubham prapya, ashubham prapya. Shubham prapya na abhinandati, ashubham prapya na dveshti. Tasya prajna is knowledge, prajna, buddhi is dhihi is pratishtita, is well established. His knowledge is steady. For the one who is unattached in all situations, who does neither rejoice on gaining the pleasant nor hate the unpleasant, his knowledge is well established, steady. The Muni discussed in the last shloka is a person referred to here. A Muni is a Jnani, Panditaha, Buddhiman, Dhiman, who has a capacity for vichara and therefore knowledge. Such a person is said to be unattached to anything. Sarvatra anabhisnegaha. Sneha means affection, love. The literal meaning of this word in Sanskritam is anything viscous, like oil or glue. Oil or glue is sticky, therefore it's called sneha. That is why the two people are said to be close together, friends. Like oil, they are sticky, they stick together. That's called friendship, sneha iti. So sneha is, in Sanskritam, is anything that is viscous, like oil or glue. If you touch it, it sticks to you. Thus anything sticky is called sneha. That is why friendship is called sneha, friendship or love, sneha. Affection is considered to be sneha because a person for whom you have affection sticks to you. If the person is away from you, he or she is always with you in your thoughts. Because there is sharing involved, the other person's joys and sorrows becomes your joys and sorrows. You're deeply affected by the person and therefore there is sneha, affection between the two of you. Affection need not be a problem. However, attachment, the sneha becomes abhisneha, is definitely a nuisance. When a mother has affection for her child, there is no problem because the child needs the affection in order to grow well, to be fondled, talked to, listened to, and cared for, all of which is sneha. It's important for the child's growth. Mother cannot be unattached. Mother cannot be unattached, yes. Child requires. But what usually happens is that affection becomes attachment, and attachment means there is a strangulation of some kind. Instead of being an object of your affection, the person becomes an object to be possessed and controlled. That's a problem. The need to control is a common problem everywhere. It's a very old problem, which is why Krishna addressed it in this shloka. Attachment is not there for a wise person. His or her art is never caught anywhere. It is always free and in its own place. In fact, most of us have empty hearts because that which is our heart has been distributed in little bits to various places. A little bit in the furniture, another bit in the carpet, and still another bits in your bank balance and a variety of things, other things. All that is left is a ticking heart. Everything else has been liberally distributed around and about. In this way, we lose our hearts in quite a few places and even say so, I lost my heart. Your mind is always where your heart is. And where your mind will be, where the heart is, because that is where you are. Wherever the emotional attachment is, the mind will run right to it. Thus, the heart being in 100 different places, the mind attempting to keep pace with it necessarily goes to the same 100 places and in fact finds it quite difficult to cope with all the travel. A person who has a wound involving pain and a little swelling will look at the wound every few minutes and stroke it ever so gently. Because there is pain and a lot of healing activity going on, the wound receives all of the person's love and attention. The mind goes there because the heart is there. The whole system naturally wants to fight it out and will certainly not allow the mind to dwell upon the meaning of Sachidananda at this time. Thus, our attachment is towards many things and many places, including heaven, none of which attracts the wise person. Any description of heaven that you can think of, no matter how seemingly perfect, will not interest a wise person. He or she is one who is not caught up anywhere, whose heart is with him or her and never gets lost. Such a person may have love, friendship, affection, and care, but nothing more. This is why the prefix abhi is added to this word sneha. Thus, the wise person may have affection, but no attachment is evidenced throughout the Upanishads in the Gita. Krishna definitely had affection for Arjuna when he said, "Oh, my friend, I am teaching you because you are my devotee and I am your friend." It's going to say that in the fourth chapter, Bhaktosi me saka cheti iti. He talked to him very fondly. We find many expressions in the Upanishads, "E Saumya," "O pleasing one," etc., referring affectionately to a student. The point is that while there is affection, there is no attachment, because attachment helps no one, definitely not the mumukshus. The shloka also tells us that the wise person doesn't dance for joy over desirable situations or hate undesirable situations. Shvashubham tattat prapya na abhinandati na dveshti. Na dveshti. The word shubha means that which is good, auspicious, pleasant, and desirable. Ashubha means that which is unpleasant, like death, disease, and so on. To hate an undesirable situation is nothing but refusal to accept a fact. A wise person doesn't hate a given situation, meaning that he or she accepts it as it is, and therefore doesn't subject himself or herself to sorrow. In the face of both the pleasant and the unpleasant, the auspicious and inauspicious, Shubha Shubham, the wise person is the same. Samaha, for a yogi, it's a matter of attitude, born of a certain understanding. Whereas for a jnani, it is a natural, spontaneous expression. This is the only difference. In his commentary on this shloka, Shankaracharya confirms that the one who remains the same in the face of both pleasant and unpleasant situations is well established in knowledge. This is because the person is free from the swings of joy and sorrow, elation and depression. There are no stock market highs and lows because a person's knowledge is born of Atma and Atma Viveka, discrimination between the real and the unreal. Krishna described the same person further in the next shloka, which we will read, 58th shloka, in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Dhanyavadaha.